Despite growing up with the Mario and Luigi series very near and dear to my heart, I actually don't really think too much about it anymore, and if I'm being honest, I've actually only finished Superstar Saga and Partners in Time, so yes, I know that I'm a criminal because I've never beaten Bowser's Inside Story. And Dream Team just didn't really feel like it hit right for me, despite Luigi being my favorite game character ever. Rest in peace, Hero Luigi, I'll never forget you. But really, just because I didn't finish the games doesn't mean that I don't love them and what they bring to the table. Superstar Saga came out when I was 13, 7th grade, baby! I remember how excited I was for this game, and when I got it, I swear I beat the whole thing as quickly as I could. One of my fondest gaming memories around this time was lunchroom talk with one of my buddies, comparing where we were at, what was coming up, and sharing strategies with each other. He was one of the cool ones that didn't lie about games or something like that, like a lot of my other friends did. We both beat it around the same time, and we decided to race to see who could beat the game the fastest on a second playthrough. And honestly, I can't remember who won anymore, or even if we finished our race, but I still think about this more often than one would think. He moved away a few months after this, so Ricardo, if you're out there, I hope you're doing well, man. Anyways, the combat, the characters, the sound design, the babbling, oh god, the babbling! Everything about these games just exudes charm, which is why when I was watching the Nintendo Direct for the end of the system lifecycle, just expecting trash, Nintendo sat us the hell down and said, hey, hold my beer. This isn't your grandpa's end-of-life console cycle, and they opened the show with Brothership, and I immediately started brother-ing. The animation, the brothers, the animation, the bros, the art, the bros, the animation, the bros! It was fantastic, and my Discord chats just started blowing up, and it was coming this year? Oh my god! So then I played it, and I decided that I have to come out of YouTube retirement for my little more than 200 followers because I gotta talk about this game and I gotta talk about its music. See, this game does a lot right for a Mario RPG, and some of the things better than any of the others, I think. The story, characters, art, and battle systems, they're all highlights here. But all of that is hidden behind a lot of fluff, a pretty rough 8-hour opening, consistent pacing issues, repetition, boring battles, and by the time I was done with my 50-hour long adventure, I just wanted it to be over because this is a game that is just too damn long. But the one thing that was absolutely on point all of those 50 hours was the music. Not a true dud in the soundtrack, I think, and that's why we're here today, but we'll get to that. If you're just here for the music, go on and skip to the marker in the video. I'm doing long-form content now, my friends. So our adventure starts with my main man Luigi being chased by bees, because plot device. He falls off a cliff and Super Mario himself saves him. Naturally, through the power of story convenience, they're whisked away to this place called Concordia. And after a brief tutorial where you reunite the brothers, you're taken to Ship-Shape Island, and man, I love this place. I don't know what it is about Nintendo and islands, but they sure make some good ones. Shoutouts to Woohoo, the greatest Nintendo character of the Wii era. Prove me wrong. But anyways, I love Concordia. It feels alive with many characters moving between spots all the time, minor changes over time, and overall just great aesthetics. Appropriately, the island is a ship. Get it? Brother ship. The sail's a big tree, meaning the island is a ship. Brothership. The best part about Concordia has to be the Concordians. These are by far my favorite of the different peoples of the different Mario RPG games. They're these little wall outlet people, and they're absolutely adorable. You're quickly introduced to the main Concordian on your quest, the aptly named botanist Connie, who tells you that the island used to be held together by the power of that large sail tree called the Unitree with connector energy that flowed from the giant lighthouses. After tragedy struck though, the world was separated into floating islands, with Ship-Shape Island being able to traverse this now Mario and Luigi cross One Piece world. And with this, we have our Mario RPG plot. Rather than stars, we're collecting islands and reconnecting the land, helping the botanist do botanist things, you know, the normal stuff. Also, I want to add, Connie's adorable. She must be protected at all costs. Such a great, down-to-earth character. It's a shame that there isn't a plush of her. Get on that, Nintendo. And finally, this here is Snoutlet. Their Snout, it's an outlet. They accompany us on this journey and play the part of narrator for the brothers, as well as answering questions and explaining things to us. Snoutlet wants you to know that he isn't a pig, but we all know what they really are. And with this, all the pieces are in place to get our seafaring adventure on its way. And what an adventure it is. You're taken to a bunch of different themed islands, which actually feel a bit more unique to me than other Mario locales. You still have your forest, your deserts, lava, ice, etc., but they're actually all structured around these little villages and towns with places to explore while you look for the lighthouses to reconnect back to the Unitree. The Concordians you meet along the way help you out, or at times may even hinder you, but it's an absolute delight getting to experience the different islands, meet this surprisingly diverse cast of characters. They're all great, especially Technicky. She's a scientist who doesn't necessarily believe that she's the greatest, and helping her reach her maximum potential is one of the major side stories in this. Then there's also Chilium and Bernadetta. Their villages are in constant strife with each other because naturally fire and ice, they don't get along, what a joke. Their love, though, knows no bounds, and they literally tell you at one point that they just want to disappear and canoodle, which I still can't believe that Nintendo put this in a game. Doug, how did you approve this? I mean, I know that there's adult anime games on the eShop, Doug. Do you know that? You should go look for yourself. This is dealing with male and female plugs right now, and you think that we don't know what it's about? You think the kids aren't going to know what it's about? Why don't you go figure it out and fix it, Doug? Anyways, the game is filled with these little stories that are just very down to earth, which honestly is really very refreshing and reminds me a lot of the partner stories from the Paper Mario games. But that also might be a point of contest to some people. See, the Mario Luigi series is known for its witty writing and really over-the-top eccentric characters. And while we definitely do have some of that, it takes a backseat to the theme of building relationships and bonds. It's a much more down-to-earth, humanistic type of story. And at first, I really didn't know how I felt about this, but pretty quickly after meeting the Idol team, I was definitely on board for this new style. And that isn't to say that all of the humor is gone. In a Mario & Luigi game, this is always first and foremost spearheaded by the brothers themselves. And although I'll always miss Charles Martinet, especially because his name is almost exactly my middle name of Charles Martin, Kevin does an excellent job of getting the babble on. There are characters and situations too that are more reminiscent of the older games, the Extension Corps being one of the highlights in this sense. They're the main cronies for a while, and their scenes are always great. You've got your big dumb brute, the cackly little guy, and 10 is the one with the great pompadour. The Concordians, man, they don't miss. And in addition to this, the #1 dragon, turtle, lizard, reptile, Koopa King Bowser is here too, because you know he's always ready to toss hands and get down and tussle. I find their antics to be some of the more charming memories throughout, actually. As they're also in a new area trying to get their bearings, his army isn't really sure what to do with Mario and Luigi at all times, but they always just settle on, oh, what the hell are we doing? We're supposed to be fighting them, get them. Even going through Bowser's castle, you still have enemies stopping to ask if they should be fighting you. One particular interaction with a lone weak Koopa who just joined Bowser's army I found to be one of the funniest moments of the game. Moments like this really keep things feeling fresh in the story department, and while the story isn't focused around the humor necessarily, moments like these really put the cherry on top of what I really think might be far and away my favorite story in a Mario RPG to date. So with that, let's talk about the combat, because it's a large part of what makes this game such a drag. I don't even need to bring up the battle animations because you already know that they're so good. And the first time you pull off the classic action commands and see the brothers working together for even their most basic of moves, it's hard not to fall in love with this. And likewise, the last time you pull off one of these basic attacks in the game, it's the same. Same animation. No additions with power increase. Nothing changes at all. It's the same animation. You're thinking I'm exaggerating in some way. I'm not. I'm sorry. It's the same. And while this isn't a problem inherently, this does highlight much of what's rough about the battle system, in that 90% of it is just incredibly repetitive. You're doing the same basic attacks on the same 2 or 3 enemies per island between probably 20 to 40 more times per island. You attack with Mario, the enemies attack. You attack with Luigi, the next turn you'll probably KO most of what's on the screen, which doesn't sound too long, but later on in the game, it's not uncommon to get a bajillion basic enemies on the screen at once, and their attack animations get really, really long. It felt sometimes like I was sitting through their attacks for 2 or 3 minutes at a time. I never actually timed it, but I swear it was that long. But the good news is that the brothers' attacks are back through inventions primarily provided by our girl Technicky. And the bad news is that these are also a problem. There's a total of 5 per brother, and you get 1 in each major area. Let's just assume 8 hours per major area. That means you get a new set every 8 hours. It's insane. To make things worse, these don't upgrade either. They more or less, with just a couple of exceptions, exist in a hierarchy where the newest attack is almost always better than the last, so you really don't have much of a reason to go back and use the previous attacks because they aren't as strong or they hit fewer enemies. And with that, the early ones that truly hit all the enemies are very weak by late game, and the late ones in the game that hit all of the enemies select enemies at random. I kid you not, with 7 enemies on the screen, it was not uncommon for me to pick one of the moves and it just bashed the same enemy over and over again, 12 times or whatever, to where I only damaged one of them. So you're using the same basic attacks, and you're using the same 2 brothers moves, with exceptions, for each major area of the sea. This makes the fights get truly repetitive, which just makes it drag and drag. And that really sucks because the combat of other Mario and Luigi games is one of the best highlights of the series. Now, there are a few plus sides. The counters that you perform to the enemy's attacks are actually super varied in timing, unique, and even the individual enemies have a lot of ways that make it hard to predict not only what brother they're going to attack, but at what time or how many times they're going to attack. Because of this, on the defense side, combat does often feel very fresh, and it makes it feel like when you pull off counters, it makes it feel very rewarding. Then the boss fights are also always a blast. They play out largely the same way, just on a grander scale because they're bosses. But what makes these really special is Luigi. See, Luigi is the thinker in this game, and because we stan Luigi in this house, I love the attention he gets. He's super well respected, maybe even more so than Mario outside of the couple obligatory green Mario jokes. You see, Luigi gets what they call Luigi logic, which helps you solve puzzles or give the brothers or other characters ideas on how to solve things. But Luigi also gets to have his logic in fights too, and he'll come up with some crazy ideas on how to incapacitate the bosses, and he just tells Mario, "Leave it to me!" And the antics he gets up to with these boss moments are always highlights. It really makes it feel like Luigi is steering the ship in these fights and situations. Love it. Then the best aspect of combat is simultaneously also frustrating because this game actually creates a really good and unique system that's muddled by the rest of the combat. These are the battle plugs. So across the game, you'll encounter sprite bulbs in the overworld, and when you pull these out, Luminade will pop out. Collecting these will allow you to craft different sprite bulbs, which give you different battle abilities or bonuses. These can range from hitting more enemies with basic attacks, dropping spike balls on their heads, increasing damage, using fire or ice, getting more coins, or auto-using items, among other things. You can add 1 or more plug every 8 hours-ish, but unlike the brothers moves, this actually feels rewarding because the different plugs interact with each other. For instance, if you combine 2 kaboom attacks to hit all enemies with the surprise iron ball, then all enemies will have an iron ball drop on their heads. When you have 4 plugs, you can add an attack boost to gain an extra basic jump or hammer attack in your attack sequence, then all enemies will now get hit and have 2 iron balls drop on their head. This means that you can tailor the plugs to the type of playstyle that suits you best, or optimize it at different times for offense or defense. What really pushes this over the edge, though, into being a great system is each one has a limited number of uses before it needs to recharge. You're allowed to swap plugs in the middle of the battle because of this, so you're constantly using a variety of plugs for different situations and being incentivized to try new combinations when some of your favorites aren't available. It's a really fresh-feeling system that normally, I would say, could verge into gimmicky territory. But finding new combinations always feels really satisfying and like you've unlocked something either through thinking about interactions or just getting lucky. And it sucks because this system is in direct opposition in feeling so fresh to the battles themselves just feeling so stale. I just don't know what Acquire was thinking with the way they structured the pacing of these battles. The battle pacing really does, though, just highlight probably the biggest issue in the game that, man, this game is long. And I mean crazy long. It takes forever to do absolutely anything at all. The first major area of the game is essentially the tutorial section, and it lasted 8 hours! 8! What? 8! It kept going, and by the time I finished it to unlock the second part of the ocean, I was questioning if it was going to stay like this. And I will say, it does significantly pick up after this point, and things do move quite a bit quicker, but it's still bogged down by a lot of backtracking, re-exploring areas, and a lot of exposition that probably could have been skipped. It took me around 50 hours to beat the game, and I skipped most of the side quests. Granted, I had left it idling for a bit, so the playtime was actually probably more like 45 hours, But this game felt longer to me in a lot of ways than Persona 5 did at 100 hours, simply because there's so much time of where you're not doing anything meaningful, or at times not doing anything at all. I found myself running from fights eventually and using major fights to level up instead, mostly just because the sheer amount of time was getting to me. And that's not to say that the game isn't enjoyable at this point, it's actually quite the opposite. The good things about what make the game great actually do continue on in full force, if not get better. The character stories develop nicely, introducing new characters and plotlines, each character with a nice conclusion to their story. Some plotlines are revisited in new ways, such as when you get the fire and ice power-ups as well. And despite the repetitive battles, each new area and boss fight does manage to keep things a little fresh at the start, as there's new enemy attack patterns to learn. In addition, the farther you go, the more plugs you get, creating more and more possible combinations on how to jack up your enemies. There's actually a pretty good plot twist as well in regards to Zocket. It creates a truly engaging story and one of the most horrifying and, in a twisted way, fun final villains in a Mario game. I was talking to one of my friends who was playing through at a slightly quicker pace than me, and around hour 30, I was saying how the game should have been over by this point. They didn't agree, even though they were 10 hours ahead of me, but an hour later, they sent me a message saying, okay, you're right, this game is too damn long. And I had no idea what they were talking about until after the time it seemed like the game was actually over, did the game pull a 180 and literally have like 8 more hours of game. The crazy thing about this is I didn't even touch the side quest like I said. I just didn't want to make the whole experience longer to where I wouldn't finish it. It's a shame because after tons of tedious backtracking in this initial collect the star style sprint, you get to the true endgame and it's phenomenal. You think you know where the plot is going to go with this, but the game manages to give you some really uncomfortable situations right at the end with some very familiar Mario scenery. It's expertly done, and it's simply a ride to the end from here on out. The build up to the last boss fight is something that I would never have experienced in a Mario RPG, and I would reserve something more like that to be in a traditional JRPG. The ending does wrap up what I think is the best story in a Mario RPG to date quite nicely. It ties up all the loose ends and even gives you some hope that down the line the characters will reunite at some point in the future. Please, Nintendo, give us the Concordians back. Put Connie in the next Smash Brothers. I'm just saying. The criminal thing, though, with this ending sequence is that I'm willing to bet the majority of people who play Brothership actually won't play enough of it to actually experience the peak of this ending sequence. The game really does ramp up over time, but especially those first 8 hours, they just drag on so long. Most players are probably going to jump ship before the best parts of the game even get close. And it's truly disappointing, because hidden inside of what is a cumbersome and long game is one of the most endearing and best RPGs that Nintendo has ever put out. It's tough for me to rate because so much of it is so good, and so much of it is just so mid. And I definitely don't agree with the 5 out of 10 IGN score. I'm probably hovering somewhere more around a 7 or so. It's a tough call. Great game, it's just too much game. But you know what's a banger through all of these 50 hours with no slack, no chill, and had me consistently surprised all the way throughout? The music. And no one is talking about it. It wouldn't be a video by me if I didn't talk about music for 20 minutes, so I'm gonna talk about the music in this game for 20 minutes because no one else wants to apparently, so I gotta do it. Oh yeah, there's gonna be a history lesson before we start, so get ready. Mario and Luigi music is often described as bouncy or quirky. It has a lot of driving rhythms, offbeats, and a lot of modal scales. The standard quirky scale is usually considered Lydian, which is my namesake scale of Kylydian. But that doesn't mean that all music is always written in Lydian. Quite far from it. Truth be told, you can make music bouncy or quirky through any aspect of composition, but I'm not here to break down theory and harmony for you all. Other people already do that already. Let's talk concepts. One thing that you do need to note about this soundtrack is that it serves a very different purpose than past Mario and Luigi games. Going back to the idea that I was talking about with Brothership being much more down to earth with a more relatable story, the music does reflect this vibe. Part of the soundtrack's job is obviously not to only match the aesthetics, but the overall feel of the game, including the plot. It's still bouncy music like past games, but it reflects this idea of being a bit more grounded in traditional orchestration in some ways, while also being actually kind of weird. The overall orchestration of the Mario and Luigi series is often highlighted by pizzicato strings, or when you pluck a string instrument, high winds, and tons of percussion. And you actually get a lot of those ideas still, but the overall instruments that you hear the most of is actually more akin to kind of a weird jazz big band ensemble, which, surprise, surprise, is not a surprise at all, because that's usually most Mario soundtracks is big band music. Trumpets and saxophones galore, strings, flute, auxiliary percussion, some mallets, and accordion. Accordion? One might think that some of these instruments might not fit, especially the accordion. It's instrumentation that honestly I wouldn't necessarily expect myself, but it does work in so many ways. The style of a good bit of the music that you often hear has some roots in more of this big band style of instrumentation, which does reflect the Mario series as a whole, and that does help play into the quirkiness in a lot of ways. There's a lot of offbeats and odd rhythms in big band music all the time. And truth be told, you can add instruments in a lot of unique ways that you might not normally think of. But with that said, there's just some things that you don't normally hear. You don't usually hear strings or some of the percussion, even including mallets at times, and accordion especially are just some of these instruments that we don't expect. It's really odd in a lot of ways. So, because of this, let's talk about why we might be seeing a few of these instruments featured so prominently in this big band-esque music. The long story short of it is many of these instruments are either associated with sailing instruments, sea shanties, or folk songs. So let's start with the accordion, as it's both probably the most out of place in regards for the orchestration and also the most prominently featured instrument in the soundtrack. Or instead of accordion, I should probably say concertina. The concertina is an accordion-like instrument, but it has keys on both ends of the instruments and also is a bit smaller. And because they're a bit smaller than accordions, and also because some of its origins are from Britain, it was actually used more historically among those who travel. It's why explorers who sailed the seas often had them on board their ships, among some of the other instruments that you do hear in the soundtrack as well. I'm not an expert in the concertina by any means, but according to my research, even though it's associated with sea travel and piracy, it was actually developed fairly late in sea travel history, in the first half of the 1800s, just a little bit before the time of the saxophone actually. See, the interesting thing with this instrumentation is that sea shanties have much of their roots in music from England. And if you look throughout music history, English music is actually surprisingly absent, with the majority of music from the Common Practice era being from Germany, Italy, and France. It wasn't until the 19th century, or around the time of the concertina, that we began seeing a more organized musical force out of England. The interesting thing about this, and how it relates directly to Mario and Luigi's orchestration and composition, is that much of the music was adapted folk songs from centuries gone by in a time called the British Folk Revival, where they were looking to preserve the music of the past while making more of a presence of their own. With this revival, there was one ensemble that came about that has more than a bit of influence on the style of instrumentation here: the British Brass Band. It's basically exactly what it sounds like, just a ton of brass instruments. Concert band, like the one that you may be in high school, either currently or in the past, or college if you've got a music degree like me, actually has much of its roots in the brass band. And there's almost 100% chance that you've played some of the music of the folk revival. Ralph Vaughan Williams or Percy Grainger, anyone? Molly on the Shore? You know that slaps. With this brass band concept leading into concert band is where we began to see saxophone enter the classical scene. Many of the instruments of the concert band are also shared between the jazz band as well. As such, this simultaneously plays into the history of sea exploration as well as the expansion of British music as a whole across the seas. Because of this, while flutes and other similar wind instruments are often synonymous with seafaring away from this journey through the ages, brass instruments, specifically the trumpet, have come to also be one of the chosen instruments of sailors. So because trumpet has been associated with sailing and the sea, this is the exact same reason why there's a bajillion trumpets in Pokemon Gen 3. In the great words of IGN, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are 7 out of 10, too much water. It's why there's so many trumpets! And likewise, this is also why we get so many trumpets on this expedition of a lifetime to connect the lighthouses. Hopefully, this provides a little bit of context into these weird ensembles, as I see a lot of people online either not talking about the soundtrack or saying they don't like it. Everyone is obviously entitled to their opinions, but I think the point is being missed in some ways, partially because of the historical aspect, but more so because of the nostalgia of the music of the old games. So let's cover some examples first with some of the tracks that are heard most often. From the moment the game starts, the title screen music hits you with a uniquely fresh track that blends together the traditional bouncy Mario and Luigi music with a feeling of open air. Super appropriate for a seafaring game, right? Steel drums, brass, and strong repeating rhythmic motifs called ostinatos in the music world, and just a really nice melodic cell. Setting a game up for success musically can often be overlooked in the musical process because honestly, you don't spend too much time on the title screen in general. But initially, starting with that feeling of what you're getting into is absolutely critical. Take into account how short the melodic cell is and the filling out of the melody before it repeats itself with a different section at the end. The simplicity here is key, but it's critical to getting our minds into the mood of the game. So for all of the time that I spent bashing on the combat just a few minutes ago, I just want to say that this track is the only thing about battles that never gets repetitive. It's expertly written and makes me think back to the idea of Kondo saying he listened to the Mario Athletic theme forever to make sure he never got tired of it. The orchestration, I think, is part of it. You've got a nice variety happening, and trumpets that actually aren't overpowering for like the first time in existence, as well as that bopping concertina. And like looking back on it, it almost feels like the battles move in time to the music in a way. I know they probably don't, but it does feel like that sometimes. Mario and Luigi's voices play into the rhythms and such too, it seems. I don't know if this was actually planned or not. That's for people smarter than me to figure out, but it's still a track that I really enjoyed it at all times. The victory theme is absolutely peak. It's got that feel of Final Fantasy level up music right at the start. Mario and Luigi's dance to this is also just like the cutest thing ever. Look at him go! It's just good music. I got nothing else to say here. Shipshape Island might be my favorite track in the entire game, to be honest. I absolutely love it. It hits all the right points. It's got that bouncy feel with some of the orchestration we talked about, super seafaring-esque with the interplay between the trumpets, concertina, and a lot of doubling from the percussion, which gives us a bit of grounding in that staple style of Mario and Luigi bounciness. Lots of offbeats with the concertina take over the main melody. The other thing with the melody is like it's actually fantastic. It has a wonderful progression to it over time. I always describe music as being somewhat like the story structure of the hero's journey, kind of starting a little normal with the rising action, calming, and a slow build to a climax, to a resolution. This track really hits all of those to me. Perfect seafaring music. So all of these tracks together really help ground the rest of the soundtrack in a lot of ways. In regards to the area track, I could break all of them down in depth, but there's just too many and not enough time, so I'm just going to pick out, to be honest, more than a few, and point out some of the highlights. Rumbla Island is a pretty nice track that's a great hybrid of some of the newer style of music, as well as making sure that there's some grounding from the older games as well. But it breaks it up into separate segments. The first few sections focus on percussion, brass, with eventually a longer melody, and the trumpet, reminiscent of some of the music we've covered already. Eventually, though, a rising scale takes us into much more of a traditional Mario and Luigi music style. The following section keeps some of this grounding with the percussion in the background, despite much of the music here being focused on these longer melodies. It's both a great look musically as to what to expect in the future, while keeping itself rooted in the past of the old games before it starts to get a little bit more weird. For Twisty Island, I realized that I just really want to talk about all this music, don't I? Because this is like the island directly after that. The playlist I'm on has 69 tracks on it. Nice. And boy, I hope to keep it concise. This track slaps though. It's a lot more in the vein of the big band style of music rather than sailing music. You've got saxophones sounding a bit hybrid between classical and jazz, which as a classical saxophonist I really appreciate. Trumpets as always, the strings echoing the melody is great, and then they go an octave higher. That's one of my personal favorite techniques. It's a great way to make melodies expand more. When the trumpets take over and get into that really jazzy section, perfection. The track Problems to be Fixed. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that this is my favorite track in the game, but I do think it deserves mentioning. Sometimes simply being in the background and setting the vibe is important. Electric organ is featured really prominently here with a melody that isn't too complicated. There's a bit of grounding in the brass, which is often on the beat rather than the offbeat. This creates a different foreboding type of rhythm. This track is really great at not getting repetitive as it plays a lot. I won't get too much into the mid-boss theme because it does a lot of similar things to the main battle theme, just more. It's exactly what a mid-boss should do. Ominous opening, concertina. I keep almost miscalling this instrument the concordion. Anyone think that's why they use the concertina? Because it's similar to an accordion, and concordion basically has the word accordion in it? I don't know. Anyways, it's got a jazz band backing on the rhythm of the melody. But can we talk about the background rhythms? Oh my god, they're so good. They didn't need to go this hard. It's all over the place. Offbeats in the saxophone, xylophones going ballistic, and the rising syncopated rhythm at one point. Damn! The organ is so appropriate again, and we get some piano even. Piano makes for great battle music, and I think it's weirdly both overused and underused for bosses. So use it more, composers. Make it a problem. Make me tell you you're using it too much, but you can't, because piano is hype. Anyways, the bridge section with the repeated notes is great leading up to the flute solo for a bit of a break. This track does a great job at keeping the energy levels up while allowing our brains some time to breathe. We get percussion, piano, flute, and concertina only for a little bit before the horns and that organ come back in before the repeat to the top. What a fun track. This is it, my friends. Floral Island might not be my favorite, but I think this is where it set in for me that this is the best soundtrack in the series. It's kinda along a French-ish vibe with hints of that big band. Concertina, accordion, whatever it is, great, perfect. This is a waltz feel that doesn't really disappoint. What I really like about this is there's somewhat of a dichotomy between the visuals of the island and what you would normally expect. You might expect something more along the lines of a city with waterways, or maybe even just a town feeling rather than this picturesque nature scene. It works really well. So you reach the end of the Great Lighthouse, and this banger of a boss theme comes on. It's a great intro into what some might call an underwhelming theme. But if you said that, that's okay, because everyone has to be wrong sometimes. Right now, it'd be you. I'll have my time later. Maybe I already have in this video. Who knows? Here's the thing. It has its ominous parts, but overall, there's a lot of happy, energetic vibes to this track. Now, ask yourself, are there any others like the Brothers? Are there any faster than the Brothers? And most importantly, are you hooked on the Brothers? Hell yeah, you're hooked on the Brothers. These two have seen the end of the world so many times, and we've been with them through victory, defeat, climbing skyscrapers, defeating demons, and traversing galaxies, that now these bosses aren't jack shit. It's not us who have to get good, it's them, and the music has gotta reflect this. They're gonna get clowned on. We've got a quirky, big band opening, followed by a little bit of ominous stuff. It stays grounded though with some percussion before it just breaks out into full Mario and Luigi madness. Of course, we have to keep the seafaring stuff too though. Our favorite concertina is still there in the background. The turnaround with that organ and the bass guitar grooving, the whoop, whoop, whoop. This track uses the weird orchestration to its fullest extent to make a boss theme that's unlike any other. So out of all of the tracks, Lot of Coin Islands might simply be one of the most fun. You're infiltrating the island, and spy music often has driving horns and vibes. That's vibraphone, not vibing. And you get both of these right at the beginning, right before you break out into more of the ensemble we've talked about. A little bit of steel drum and hoots for that Mario and Luigi sailing feel before we enter into soaring trumpets, more hoots, and counter melodies. This track gives us a great introduction to plot devices for music, but it quickly grounds us right back into reality on this plucky ride. Enjoy this track quick, because you've only got it for a few minutes until you're in Lot of Coins buildings, and okay. If I was to tier list all the music in this game, this is probably the only one I would put in F tier. It's got a lot of grooving rhythms to it, but to me it's so out of place in regards for everything else, and you also hear it a lot. Honestly, I think maybe it's me and that mostly the descending lines that repeat. I find it really cheesy and distracting. Before the repeat, you get this neat interplay between the bass, organ, and the plucky bells kind of hidden in the background. That's cool. I don't know. I just want to point out that I think this one isn't that great. The section is also pretty long, so it just drags on. It's not, I want to call it horrible, just when everything else is so good, you know? Alright, Heat Freeze Island is the track that made me want to make this video if I'm being honest. If you told me to write music about both fire and ice, I don't know what the hell I'd do, but probably not this. The track is brilliant. So, the stereotypes are, with ice music, you get high-pitched mallets and metal percussion. Thanks Sleigh Ride. As for fire and lava music, you get repeating rhythms, lower tones, and often longer form melodies, or lack of melody sometimes too. Let's go through the sections. Marimba and xylophone in the beginning represent ice, while the driving guitar gives us that feeling of a little bit of heat. It's actually kind of a Western vibe to it almost. It's definitely echoed in the second section where we get a bit of grounding with the concertina again, but the accompaniment almost sounds like it switches to a banjo. In addition, the bass drum keeps that deep, bubbly feeling going. The concertina doesn't stick around long though, as the flute comes in, an instrument that's often associated with ice music. It's the section after this though, at 1 minute 30 seconds, that gets really cool, as you have a melody that's very lava-esque, but you hear it primarily on flute, the ice instrument. You get those bloopy drums too, the bloop, bloop, bloop. These always remind me of cute little lava bubbles. There's some echoing of a bassoon as well, a very lava instrument. What's that? bassoon isn't a lava instrument? Are you kidding? You're saying that choir or some other shit is more lava? Have you seen The Rite of Spring? Disney's Fantasia? The Rite of Spring and the accompanying Fantasia section of The Rite of Spring literally opens with a bassoon solo. There's volcanoes everywhere in that section in Fantasia. It's raining literal hellfire down on Earth. What are you talking about? Thank you, Stravinsky. Inversely, Slip and Glide Island is ice music through and through. Mallets, high pitches, flutes, and it's also a waltz. You hear the 3/4 time signature a lot in ice music too. You know why? It's because a good bit of Christmas music is in 3/4 time. Away in a Manger, Christmas Time is Here, The First Noel, We Wish You a Merry Christmas. The list goes on and on. In fact, the Christmas Waltz by Frank Sinatra is even self-aware of this. Every song you hear seems to say, Merry Christmas, may your New Year dreams come true. And this song of mine, in 3/4 time, wishes you and yours the same thing too. In addition, this is only my headcanon, but what's the first song that we hear when the ball drops at midnight on New Year's? Auld Lang Syne, a song signifying a new year. Its time signature? Good old 4/4. And I know that this is just me reading into it, but I like to consider this a return to normal in the new year. Anyways, that's Slip and Glide. Scorching Island is your standard lava music. Beat 1 and 3 are emphasized, deep drums, brass, soul, do, motion. Longer form melodies, melody carried prominently by the trombone, the brass instrument of choice among all of us hot people. I don't really have much to add to that. It's just really cool how when you get to an island that features both fire and ice here, it takes elements of both of those tracks and puts them together while keeping the individual islands musically distinct and familiar. When we get to Bowser's Castle, the first thing that I thought of is when was the last time we heard the Super Mario Bros. 3 castle theme? Like, actually, because I literally have no idea. Shout out in the comments if you know, because I tried finding it, and I just couldn't. With that said, how cool is it that we're getting a new arrangement of the castle theme? You know, with the sailing theme of the game, I would almost expect this to be the airship theme from Mario 3, but I guess it's a castle, not an airship. Fine. This is a great arrangement though. It's so accurate to the original, a bit slower, but the strings and the real timpani really help sell the tempo here. In regards for Bitsy Island, can we talk about how like you're just not at the places where this plays for any more than like a second? Did they need to go this hard on this track? What the hell is this? It's got that French vibe again, kind of like Floral Island, soaring concertina lines over a nice 6/8 time signature. There's a great echoing of the strings to really flesh out the orchestration, nice low brass hits and counter melodies. It's so fully fleshed out that either they meant to use this theme on another island and scrapped it for later, or they really just wanted to go this hard. Like, what? The Connecting a Great Lighthouse track is just some really good music. It starts with a mysterious vibe, which is especially highlighted because of the whole tone scale, or a scale which moves up by whole step every single time. After this, we get the return of the concertina, flute, and percussion before we get into some sweeping lines. It feels very almost like Floral Island in a lot of ways, and there's some really good harmony in this track with the flourishes. It really has a vibe in these moments of almost pure classical music. It accompanies the scene of connecting everything really well. Neat thing here at the end, but it ends on a chord that has no final resolution, showing you that the end of our journey isn't quite over yet. Alright, from here on out, there be Endgame spoilers, so get ready. If you want to skip past the spoilers to the end of the video, check the screen right now for the timestamp. In regards for Reclusa's music, I don't really want to cover a specific track in particular because they all kind of serve the same purpose, but all music involving Reclusa has a very, very different feel to the rest of the music in Brothership, and really if you think about it, it makes sense. Reclusa is simply just completely unhinged. No real reasons for why he wants to make the universe lonely, he just does. With that said though, Reclusa is basically a dimension destroyer. There's really no attachment to sailing in Reclusa's world, so you're getting music outside the norm of what we've come to expect by the 40-hour mark. God, this game is long. Have I talked about that? Sorry. There's an air of anxiety to the escape and Recluse's main theme, and loneliness to his world theme. Both of these are the types of emotions that Recluse is trying to create in his world, making everyone happy by putting them into their own world. God, Recluse is crazy. The Mushroom Kingdom is so creepy in this game. After a brief encounter with Reclusa, we're all of a sudden in the Mushroom Kingdom. Obviously, we're just trapped in one of Reclusa's head thingies, but they do a really good job of selling it here for a bit. Really quick on the music, can we just talk about the Mario 3 love again? We get both the castle theme as well as the World 1 map theme. Why so much Mario 3? Why this game? I don't know, but it's great. I feel like music from Mario 3 is often forgotten in new Mario games. It's really cool to see that they're pulling from other games past just the normal overworld athletic theme, castle, or underground themes. I'm sure some other Mario game used this theme as well at some point, but honestly, I can't remember. Again, if you know where it was used, slap it in the comments and let us know. What's great though is the material used here uses that concertina again, giving us just that little bit of a reminder of Concordia and our sailing days. The rest of the arrangement past the main theme though, feels like it fits just right in as an extended version of the Mario 3 map theme. It's got a little bit of that floral island feeling again, while keeping up with that big band feel and some more traditional instrumentation. That clarinet line, absolutely great. Great usage of old stuff here as well. The further and further you go through this track though, the more it distorts and freaks me the out. The next track in the loop swaps out the clarinet line for what sounds like a synth, but to me, it's actually still sounding like a clarinet, but it's using a technique called multiphonics. Multiphonics are basically where you can play multiple notes or chords on a wind instrument at the same time, but you're venting the instrument at different spots to produce multiple notes that aren't speaking quite properly. It kind of sounds like a rattle between a bunch of different pitches. You aren't really able to play melodies on them, so they're usually more often used for effect. It's a very unsettling sound, and the fact that they're replacing the clarinet lines like this is absolutely insanely smart. This track also gets rid of the big band backing hits after the first initial melody. It's insane that they're taking so much away already. The third track in this series continues with this trend of getting rid of melodies. The concertina melody goes away, and coupled with getting rid of the big band hits as well, you're just left with piano, an accompaniment, and clarinet multiphonics. You have snippets of melody come through at times, and at the reprise of the main map theme, it's now just piano and drums before you hit that loop point. And the fourth time, more orchestration is now gone. The melody is just on marimba now. We have a deep, wobbling sub-bass, the clarinet multiphonics are still around, and occasional other synth risers with snippets of melody are here and there. What the hell is this? This sets the tone so well, and I was so freaked out when I was playing, I didn't even notice this. I only noticed this when I went back through. And all of this finally devolves into the castle hallway music. We get this big looming pipe organ playing high, the synth pad in the background, and the tiny little plucks. There's occasional notes that aren't part of the original melody, notes out of tune, changing pitch, skipped rhythm, lots of weird stuff in here, and it's really cool. Chasing down Reclusa is a rush and an absolute banger. It does a great job at setting the stage for rushing Reclusa down. This is just some fun music overall, but it actually uses one of my favorite rhythms primarily for sequences that are meant to have a driving or a pushing feeling. This has to do with syncopation, which has everything to do with anticipation. Basically, you're expecting the note to be in one spot, but it's not, so it creates a little bit of an unexpected feel, which helps create the driving rhythm. Essentially, we're getting a long, short rhythm with this, and that one short quarter note in the measure helps propel us forward in the momentum. You hear this rhythm a lot in game music. Listen out for it. Next, it's Weeping Reclusa, and it gets more and more intense as you go through the phases coming up. In phase 2, it starts to feel really frantic and disjointed because, I don't know, the stakes are actually really high here. This honestly feels so much more dire than any Mario RPG I've ever played. It literally feels like the world is falling apart. It's striking a great balance between anxiety, heroism, delusion, and focus that we need to get this thing done. In Phase 3, all hell breaks loose in the music. We get bass drum 4 on the floor to keep pushing forward. Those scratchy sounds, electronic whooshing, some of our instrumentation from our core Brothership music ensemble, and a tempo increase. The music finally says it's time. Let's finish it. And when it is indeed finished and we get the music signifying Recluse's defeat, it's a bit unsettling, to be honest, in its own way. It's music that would normally either show we're returning to home or the villain learning the evil of their ways and facing the consequences. But Recluse doesn't. He doesn't understand, and he doesn't attempt to learn or accept that bonds are what bring us together. He has a breakdown because it feels like he might want to understand, but he's actually incapable. He wanted to keep fighting for solitude and loneliness to the end. And I think this track does a really good job at communicating that just maybe he did want to understand and be saved. But regardless, Mario and Luigi save the day. And with that, it feels that just as quickly as the Solid Tree was destroyed and Concordia was saved, is it finally, after 50 hours that felt like 100, time to leave Concordia. We're given a couple more music tracks here to wrap things up, and they're also great, but nothing really too out of the ordinary. The Solid Tree track takes us back into the realm of our Brothership music ensemble with brass, flutes, and concertina, once again showing us that finally, for the final time, is our journey over. And Connie can be the true Watanus she's always wanted to be, with the accompanying fanfare at the end. As we say goodbye to all of the friends we've made along the way, we're treated to one last somber piece of music. Acoustic guitar, flute, concertina, violin, and several other instruments we've talked about accompany us on our way out and back home to the Mushroom Kingdom, where we're greeted with the Super Mario Bros. Theme played by a big band, letting us know that this brothership has truly sailed home. And that wraps up the story told through music. Obviously, I didn't do every track, as the playlist that I was going through had a nice number of tracks, but I wanted to hit some of my more favorite ones in this. I have such a love-hate relationship with this game now. On one hand, I truly do think it's the best Mario and Luigi game. The story, characters, setting, world design, and plot I feel were the best I've experienced in a Mario RPG as a whole. In some ways more so than the Thousand Year Door, which feels insane to me, and I'm probably gonna get jumped in the comments for it. But despite the few positives the combat brought, it just accentuated a game that could have told the same story in 20 less hours and a lot less fluff. Games today are getting so long, and I just don't want to devote the time to playing long RPG after long RPG, I say as I started the Dragon Quest III remake a week after I finished Brothership, and the Xenoblade trilogy 2 days after finishing the Dragon Quest remake, but that's beside the point. But definitely, outside of the plot and characters, the music really did take me to places I was never really expecting to go on this ship. So now I want you to tell me, how did the music fare for you, and what were some of your favorite tracks? I'd be curious to hear in the comments if you made it this far, since it seems like the general consensus is that some people just don't really care for this soundtrack as much. I personally feel like part of that has to do with the absence of Shimamura, and look, I get it. Everyone loves her music. I do too. She has some of the greatest game music of all time, and really, she can't be replaced. But what others can do is they can have their own voice, and that's exactly what Hideki Sakamoto did for us here. He might not have quite the historical catalog of Shimamura, but he's got some heavy hitters under his belt. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky, Lifelight from Smash Ultimate, Echochrome 2. If you don't know the Echochrome 2 soundtrack, you have to go listen to it. The entire soundtrack is one piece of music that is 75 minutes long, and it's phenomenal. It's the longest piece of video game music ever written. The point being is Sakamoto cares a lot about this. A lot. Look at this tweet he put out when the game was released. I put my heart and soul into the production of this game, and I hope you will enjoy the sound as well. This is a man who truly cares about this project, the history of this project, and didn't look to copy Shimamura, but respect her contributions to the game while providing his own unique voice to a storied franchise that so many of us love. And you know what? That's pretty neat. Thank you so much if you stuck around to the end of this video. If you look at my update history, you can probably see that it's been a very long time since I last uploaded a major video, and that's because I just don't have the time right now to do it. If you leave a like, a comment, or subscribe, you'll let me know that you want to see more of this, and I can maybe prioritize it more in my normal work schedule. Depending on how busy I get, I might do more of these. I'd love to do one on Echoes of Wisdom as well, because I think that's another soundtrack that just is criminally underrated right now. Good game music is just hitting so hard right now, and I would love to be more often able to shine a light on the historical and contextual aspects of the music in the games that we play. Catch you later, gamers.